I end up giving people the impression that I'm like an LA guy,
Yeah.
right? But no, I never even during the time that I was training with Sifu Dan on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I never lived in LA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. So if this was, let's see, if this was 1962 instead of 2022, where I grew up, they would have been celebrating the Jubilee because I grew up in Barbados.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Miami, but I never lived in LA.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Man,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I had moved to LA, I don't know if things would have worked out the way that they have now. So I think I'm pretty glad that I never did. Right. All right. So I'm just making sure
Yep.
Russell's here, Terry Valor's here, Mark, we can go. As long as those two guys are here, we got a show, right?
Good
Okay,
stuff.
so hello everyone. Welcome to the Jeet Kune Dialogues episode number, shoot, where are we? This is
255
225 or
or
something,
225.
I think. Yeah, right. With so let me give you guys the joke. I never really paid attention to Mark's surname on Facebook until a particular discussion, which we will get into in a few minutes, right? So I was always looking and going, oh, that's a cool name, Atthelair, right? Right?
Brilliant.
So when I had the idea, I go, you know what? I like how this guy talks. I'm gonna invite him on. I start looking up this surname Atthelair, and that's when I saw it's at the lair. So then I'm like, but that's not a real name. So so I still haven't even worked out how to welcome you to the Jeet Kune Dialogues, because I don't know if your last name is a secret or something. Maybe you're on like witness protection or what have you.
So no, my proper name's Mark Brockbank. Brockbank.
Okay.
And we got hacked a few years ago, and Facebook took it upon themselves to think that I was the hacker, hacked myself. So they wouldn't let me start another account with my actual name. So
Right.
we were starting our martial arts academy at the time, and we decided to call it The Lair, which we'll maybe get into later. So we just thought we'll go with Mark at The Lair, and
Yeah.
that's how that
Well,
happened. Yeah.
let me tell you, I for one, I like the name. I like the last name Atthelair. I might use it somehow, right? But in any case, welcome, man. Thanks for doing this. So
Thank you.
the story to which I alluded was, you got into the discussion. I think it was about the one about the roots of understanding the roots of the art and focusing on the roots rather than focusing on the branches.
Yeah.
Right? Do you
Yeah.
remember it that way?
Yeah. And
Okay.
there was a pamphlet involved or something about guys that were coaching various different arts in their academy, and using those different arts to allow their
Yeah.
students to express JKD and the meaning of JKD, and yeah. So I don't normally weigh in very often, but I just I thought, well, this is quite an interesting conversation. I'll throw in a few questions to see how people are thinking, because
Right.
I quite like to interrogate not only my own line of thinking but other people's, because I think that's where growth happens, when your ideas are challenged, and
Mhm.
when your ideas are challenged, they either inform you or confirm what you think. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's sort of where I
Well,
came in on
but I think, now correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think what really got your attention was when people started throwing around the word science.
it. Yeah, yeah,
They started talking about, oh, the science of this and the science of that. And that's when you weighed in, right? And so earlier today, folks, I asked Mark to give me his education background, and he's a real scientist. He has a BSc with honors in molecular biology, a BSc in astrophysics, a postgraduate certificate of education, a master's of special education needs, master's of philosophy in education, and he's a fellow of the College of Teachers. I certainly do not feel qualified to even talk to you. Right? You know, I got four, let's see, I failed 6 of my O-level exams, right? And I think I was the first person in the history of Harrison College to be promoted to sixth form, to lower six, without the requisite 5 O-levels. And then I did my A-levels in French, Latin, and Spanish, which I do not use, you know, right? I don't use them at all. So I'm not qualified to be in your presence academically.
Oh
Right?
dear.
But yeah, but people were carrying on about science this and science that. And so it seemed to me that the point you were trying to make is that science is the refinement. I think I noted it here. Let me see if I can find it. The constant refinement of knowledge through experimentation, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think people mistake science as a body of knowledge as opposed to the process by which we validate the processes of the universe or of nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think one of the examples I used was, you know, the Mona Lisa hangs on a wall in Paris, and leaves carry out photosynthesis.
Right.
Neither of those two statements are any more scientific than the other. They're both statements of objective reality, of the universe that we live in. Science, therefore, is the process by which we validate or acquire our understanding of the universe and how it works. And so it's a method. Science is a method. It's not a body of knowledge. And once we have acquired that knowledge, it just becomes knowledge. It's neither scientific nor artistic or anything. It's just knowledge. And I think when people talk about something being scientific, it might be a belief system, or it might be indeed a discipline that uses knowledge that was gleaned through scientific processes, but in and of itself, it isn't science.
It's not science. Yeah.
Yeah. And an example of that would be history. History uses scientific methods to validate its dating and so on and so forth. But in and of itself, it's not science, because it's not using the scientific method of experimentation, hypothesis testing, and those ideas.
Right.
And that's sort of where I was sort of trying to get people to understand or to look at it in those terms.
Well, I'm not sure if they did. Right. But okay, so the way I look at it then, based on what you said, is that Bruce Lee definitely made use of the scientific method, because he was refining through experimentation.
Yeah.
Right. It was definitely the idea of, well, let's try and see if this thing works, if that thing works. So he's using the scientific method, but that doesn't make the study of Jeet Kune science.
No, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the genius behind of what he did was he realized that experimentation that he was doing was indeed specific to him in many ways, that it didn't necessarily extrapolate ubiquitously across to other people necessarily. But yes, he did use that scientific method of experimentation and exploration of the various arts to develop his JKD. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think going on what you said just now, I don't think Bruce Lee was particularly interested in validating stuff for other people.
No.
Right. And I don't think he was particularly interested in validating stuff for himself and then trying to sell it to others. I think Bruce Lee was interested in developing himself and just going from there.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So decades later, when people are trying to assign these finite meanings to what he wrote or what he said or what have you, it's almost as if they're out of time. They're not thinking in terms of how he might have been thinking based on
Yeah.
the time period. They're
Yeah.
assigning, 21st century meanings to something that was said in the 1960s and 1970s.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think people forget that everything that's constructed within a social construct is in of itself a social construct. So what I mean by that is, you look back to feudal Japan. At one point, the thing to do was bujitsu and those Japanese traditional samurai schools,
Right.
because it had a social and cultural context. And then gunpowder was invented, and guns arrived, and Japan changed dramatically. And those systems became irrelevant, and only really survived because of Jigoro Kano, who tried to preserve jiu-jitsu by making a generic version of it, which then later obviously became judo.
Right.
But everything has a social and cultural context, and Jeet Kune Do was forged in a very specific cultural context in relation to what martial arts was doing at the time.
Yes.
Which is a very different landscape today, in terms of MMA. I mean, people like to theorize what would Bruce Lee be doing today, and that's an impossible question to answer. And I think it kind of misses the point somewhat.
Yeah.
But having said that, what would Jeet Kune Do would be different today, because it's a different environment now completely. And I think that's what people tend to forget, and they look upon these writings and teachings almost like a canon. It's almost like a religious canon that must be that is almost exempt from scrutiny, which I think is very dangerous. I mean, one of my favorite sayings is, if it's true all the time, and it's true everywhere. And so if something is true, it will stand up to scrutiny all the time, in every circumstance. And that I think people forget. They don't. Yeah.
Hey, you just gave me a little clue into your background when you mentioned, feudal Japan and the study of bujutsu. That's your start in martial art, correct?
Yeah, my starting point was traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. Yeah, which is an art that I love still, and still practice today. I don't teach it, but I still practice it because it's my roots. It's where I came from.
Yeah.
And the time when I was growing up in Northern Ireland, that was really the main system. That was the main art that was the most popular and the most easily accessible.
Who brought it? Who brought it to Northern Ireland?
So I trained under a guy called David Tony. He learned under Robert Clark and the British Jiu-Jitsu Association originally, and they had links with a guy called Tanaka in Japan, and various other guys like that. So I learned from them, and it was actually my instructor, David Tony, who brought over Guru Bob Breen. He was actually, David Tony was very forward thinking in that time period here in Belfast, and he brought over Guru Bob Breen not long after I'd gotten my black belt, and that's what brought me on the line of Jeet Kune Do and Kali. And it was so I still keep in touch with. He's amazing.
Bob, Bob Breen occupies, in my mind, he's a dual personality in the UK when it comes to martial art. He is both the Bruce Lee and the Dan Inosanto, right? Of Jeet Kune Do in the United Kingdom. He's both. He's both the Bruce Lee and the Dan Inosanto to my mind. Everybody. Well, no, not everybody. Almost everybody that I have spoken to on the Jeet Kune Do dialogues from the United Kingdom, credits Bob Breen with getting them a start or opening their minds to something or whatever. Almost everybody, right? So yeah, he's the OG, as the cool kids say in America, right? Okay, Sheehan Tony brings Guru Bob in. What happens? What is it that he does or says or shows that, and what is it that you think?
So I was very cocky at that time. I was just got my black belt. I was young. I was the bee's knees. I was sort of rising up through the ranks of the organization here, and Bob comes in. I'm standing in my beautiful white crisp gi, freshly pressed that morning, and this guy hobbles in with a dodgy looking t-shirt and tracksuit bottoms and dirty trainers, which he walks on the mats with, and I'm going, flip me, what's this guy going to teach me? This guy couldn't possibly teach me anything, and he this is before he had his hips done, so he could hardly move. God love him. And then he started to move just in this tiny space. He didn't step, he didn't do anything. He just found endless amounts of space just in where he stood.
Yeah.
And it was just incredible. And I just stood in awe of him. And I made the decision on that day that once I became financially independent and I was making my own money and I had a job, I was traveling to London to train with Guru Bob. And that's what happened. And he taught me, I suppose the biggest lesson he's taught me is never be unteachable. Never get to that stage where you think you're so good that you're unteachable, because then your journey stops. You know, and Guru is just an inspiration to us all. You know, he's over 70 now. He's better now than what he ever has been. And his depth of knowledge is just incredible. Those are the biggest things that he's taught me. And he's grown. When I first started training with Bob, he was doing amazing stuff, but now he's taken it further now, and he's developed 4D combat, which is different. It is an evolution. They're inventing stuff as well as just doing techniques that we were doing from 20 years ago. They've actually made those techniques better and engineered new stuff that replaces some of the things that we were doing before. And he has done what the people who would sort of talk about stripping away the inessentials and you shouldn't be adding styles, you should be reducing. He has done that, so he's a perfect case study in my view of what embodies Jeet Kune. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to emulate. No, I'm trying to emulate that because it's
I find that a lot of the old school people, to a certain degree, practice or even personify the old school idea of that you don't even talk about Jeet Kune. You just do what you do, and it's relatively invisible.
Yeah,
it's like it's identifiable to those who know what they're looking at, right? But you're not necessarily labeling it as Jeet Kune or what have you. So let's fast forward to this era. Raptr gets opened up during COVID.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. Yeah.
What kind of an astute business idea was that? That's been character building. Yeah. 2 weeks before lockdown 1, I signed all the legals, and it was really tough. But having said that, I mean, we pulled out a lot of stops. You know, we worked really hard. We actually grew our membership over lockdown, which was incredible. Yeah.
And we just diversified. you know, there's myself and Sarah, one of the other coaches. She's also a teacher. So we started running Zoom classes every morning for the parents, for the kids, to allow the parents to work from home. So we did a numeracy hour, a literacy hour, a creative hour. So that was 3 hours a day where the parents were able to forget about the homeschooling and let us do that while they were able to work. And that actually grew our membership, which was fantastic. And then we also did Zoom classes for the martial arts. I'm zoomed out now for martial arts.
Oh yeah.
But we did that, and yeah, we pulled it out of the bag. So yeah, it was crazy. But in hindsight, looking back on it, I think if I hadn't had that as a focus, I would have went mad. You know.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it forced me as an individual to grow, because I had to learn about technology and learn about how to use Zoom and all that sort of stuff, which I would have avoided like the plague.
Right.
But it forced me to grow, which was good. And actually learning to be a coach over Zoom, that really stretches you as a coach to work out, you know, how do I break this down and get this across to my students through the media of the internet. And that was so yeah, there was definitely positives to it. I think that's what you just have to do. You just have to grasp onto those positive aspects of it and make the most of it. You know.
So vocationally, you're a teacher. You're in academics, right?
So I've left that now to pursue the lair. So I'm
Right.
full time. I'm full time in the academy now,
Right.
which all happened 2 weeks before lockdown 1.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
But you learned. I mean, but you learned. Well, let's put it this way: you learned to teach in school, like
Yeah.
normal school.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's something we bring to Raptr, because martial, in terms of the children and families, we teach a lot of children and families, and it's really, the martial arts side of things is really about 50 to 60% of what we do. You know, we have enrichment programs that we have adapted, that we would have used and written for the classroom. We have a very unique anti-abuse program, anti-grooming program that we take the children through as part of their martial arts training, with an anti-bullying, like a bully-proof empowerment program that we also take the children through as well. So yeah, I think we do what we do very well is merging that education side with the martial arts, and they do blend very well together. You know, in terms of personal enrichment and personal growth. I mean, that's really what martial arts is all about, and that's what happens in class. Well, that's what should be happening in classrooms up and down the country. So, yeah, it's been unique that way.
That is, in some people, not you, but in some people, that's a very trite statement to make. You know, that martial art is about personal growth and development and what have you. But give me a concrete example of your application of that philosophy, your application of that idea.
Well, certainly over here in the UK, a problem that I see in schools is children are kind of shielded. Certainly primary school or elementary school children are shielded as much as possible from failure, or feeling like failures. You know, so it's not uncommon for primary schools here to have non-competitive sports days, for example, and things of that nature. And so one of the things we work on a lot with children here is having this capacity to fail and to fail often and to learn from that failure. You know, and so we'll enter kids into, we do a lot of savate kickboxing, and we don't care whether the kids are going to win or lose. We just take them off to the competitions because they need to learn to lose. And it's from those losses that we get most growth from. You learn more from a loss than you do from a win. So that's one example. Another example is coming into a martial arts academy is in itself a daunting experience for a lot of children, especially after COVID, where they have been they've been sewn to their parents' hip for the last 2 years, and so that anxiety is big problem for them, so we have a whole strategy here of welcoming them at the door with a child that they're going to train with, and that child brings them in, introduces themselves, gets them onto the mat. So both the kids are growing and developing there. One child's learning to be a mentor, and the other child's learning to overcome their anxiety. So it's things like that we would do just from our knowledge of being teachers. Another one would be, we are a very inclusive gym in terms of special needs and so on. So with children in here with autism, with other difficulties, and I think that's very important for them to feel included as valid members of society. But also, it's important for the other kids to learn that not everybody's the same. And they have a moral obligation to include everybody and to make those people feel welcome. So those are just a few examples of what we would do.
That technique, your intake procedure of having one kid bring the other kid in, did you learn that in studying martial art business, or is that something you developed on your own, or what?
Well, we did a fair bit of research with parents and stuff, asking them about, what do you think were your main barriers for your child coming in, and this and so on. And I think our experience as teachers, I think it's a bit of both. I think our experiences as teachers allowed us to identify a problem before it became a big problem, and troubleshoot methods around how to deal with it. I mean, with me having a background in special education, the school that I taught in, we would have had a lot of children who would have been coming to us from mainstream and would have had very high levels of anxiety coming into school because of that. And that would have been the method we would have used there, where a child from their form class would have met them and brought them in. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both, a bit of business study and experience, and also as our experience as teachers. Yeah.
Is there, because this I don't know, because in maybe not as much as before, but there are definitely at least 5 martial art business gurus in the United States. Is there such a thing in the UK, a martial art business guru?
There's a few guys. There's Matthew Chapman, who's connected with Bob, and I know him through Bob Breen. There's another guy, Swamp Nagar, who I'm actually with at the minute. He's teaching me how to use Facebook. Being a teacher, I avoided Facebook like the plague. So it was a steep learning curve trying to learn about that. So we needed a lot of help with that. And Swapnill's been really, really good with that. Yeah, so there's a few, and then there's another guy. I can't remember his name, but he runs a lot of martial arts skills around the. I can't remember his name. You know what? Yeah, can't remember. But yeah, there's a few guys, but they're hard to come by. Yeah.
I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I was not sure when I started looking up Raptor. I was not sure if there was more than one academy, because somehow I ended up thinking that there was one in Scotland, and then that there was another one, and now I'm trying to remember. I think it was I saw something about Dundonald, right?
That's us.
Yeah, right. But it was Dundonald in Castleorg or something. And for some reason I thought, oh, but this must be Scotland.
Right, okay.
Right? Yeah,
Okay.
So then I'm looking around and I go, oh no, it's just one place. But I still want to know, Raptor, where does that name come from?
So it's an acronym which we developed from training with Guru Bob. So when I was sitting down trying to think of a name and how we would identify ourselves, I just wrote down the main things that I learned from training with Guru Bob, and it was to respond to an attack. We want to train our people to respond with aggression or assertiveness, depending on whether you're teaching adults or children, with precision, with a target and targeted, and to be realistic. And that's sort of where it came
Right.
from. Plus,
Right.
I'm very dyslexic, and I just quite like the idea of spelling it wrong too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And plus, children love dinosaurs, and
Right.
again, the main. I suppose you can summarize all that up by what Bob says, which is always be the hunter. So we wanted something that was a bit unique, not a tiger, not a dragon, but something different that wasn't what
Right.
most
Yeah.
people use. So and I like
Yeah.
dinosaurs, and
Yeah.
Jurassic
Well,
Park. So.
I'm sure it's a hit. Just the name itself is a hit with especially probably with the hatchlings.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And it was, yeah, and the marketing is really the image branding, and I'm really proud of it. Because it's just there's so many things that have just come out of it that have been really really relevant, as you say, hatchlings and Raptor Pack and the lair, and
The lair. Yeah.
it's just all come together, which is I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So the other thing that brought you to my attention, so to speak, right, on Facebook was when I want to say, in your frustration in having this Facebook discussion, you're like, okay, well, somebody answer me these questions, right? So I actually copied your questions and messaged you and said, hey, I think you should come on the Jeet Kune dialogues. And since my idea was, well, since nobody ever answered them for you, how about you answer your own questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have them here. The first one was Jeet Kune finished on Bruce Lee's death, right? So I not only do I want your answer, I want you to give me the background behind why you would ask someone that question in a Facebook Jeet Kune discussion. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So from my memory, as we said before, there was a pamphlet that was posted, and I actually thought the pamphlet was actually really good, in terms of how it outlined things.
Right.
And a gentleman sort of posted this up to sort of say, look, here we go again. This is more to do with accumulating styles and more adding instead of taking things away. And it's not what Bruce Lee originally taught. Therefore, this isn't Jeet Kune. It's just MMA or something along those lines. And it kind of sparked in my head this idea of, well, it's really getting to the root of what Jeet Kune is. What is Jeet Kune? And there's a big debate raging at the minute still about what it is.
Right.
And I sort of thought, well, was Jeet Kune finished? Do these individuals who think that the premise of that article that was posted was wrong, what actually do they think Jeet Kune is? And so do they think it was finished on Bruce Lee's death? Do they think that Bruce Lee, whether he died or not, had stopped his journey in Jeet Kune? And I suppose some people try to ask the question in a different way by saying, if Bruce Lee was alive today, would he be doing BJJ? And I sort of think to myself, well, that's the wrong angle to be coming at it from, because we don't know what direction he would have taken it.
Right.
Would he have gone down the sort of military combatives route? Would he have gone down just the street self-defense route? Would he done both?
That's what I was saying in the beginning. They apply their 2022 thinking, right, to Bruce Lee. So it's just, to me, to try to be impressive scientifically, they're doing a lot of psychological projection. Right? But to me, you're right. You can't answer that question on Bruce Lee's behalf. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
There's no way, right?
No.
So
Absolutely. Yeah, and so that's the wrong way of going about it, I think. And I think the next question really is, well, are they saying that Jeet Kune is just what Bruce Lee taught. Um, and that to me comes across as a very curriculum based definition of what Jeet Kune Do is. There's a list of moves or a list of techniques, and therefore those list of techniques must be practiced and taught for it to be Jeet Kune Do. And then that sort of throws up questions in my head along the lines of, well, okay, as I get older and I get more injured and I get more broken as I get older, and I can't do those group of techniques, and then I can't do those group of how many techniques must fall off the list before I'm no longer doing Jeet Kune Do if it's a curriculum based art? And so and then it comes back to what I was saying, what we sort of touched on earlier on again about the social cultural context. Again, when we look back to feudal Japan, there was over 720 documented styles of Bujitsu at one point, all closely guarded family secrets. They were all developed with a mindset, and that mindset was governed by what was happening in society around them at the time. And that mindset developed a process in their head through which they then developed methods of fighting. And so society informs that process within someone's brain. They don't just magically develop a system. A system evolves. And in Japan, it was almost a Darwinistic evolution in the sense that the fittest and most competent systems survived because they were literally chopping each other to death with swords. And so that then informed the art. And so Jeet Kune Do is the same. And within Bruce Lee's mind, there would have been a process that was governed by the context that he was in. And through that, he then developed this curriculum that he then taught. And then the question then becomes, well, is Jeet Kune Do what was happening in his head, or was it what he wrote down and taught? And that, I think, speaks to this question, which is, did Bruce Lee finish Jeet Kune Do? And was Jeet Kune Do finished on his death? In terms of the curriculum, I don't think so, because he was constantly researching. He was an avid researcher. He couldn't, I think it would be against his nature to switch that inquisitive nature off and just go, right, I'm finished, bang, done. And when you even look at the inception of Jeet Kune Do, where it came from was with Jackman and the history around that. It came from this understanding that what he knew and what he was teaching at the time, he felt could have been better. And so he went along this process of research and refinement and development. And so for me, was Jeet Kune Do finished on his death? I think it was, because it was the process of what was happening in his brain that was Jeet Kune Do. It's the method, it's the scientific method that we were talking about earlier on that he used to develop his fighting system. And it's that process, for me, is Jeet Kune Do.
Right.
And yeah.
So if you say that it was finished, then what are people who lived on supposed to do? What's supposed to be their approach to Jeet Kune Do?
I think it's their approach to Jeet Kune Do is that they, like ourselves, use that process, that scientific method of research and application and pressure testing and refinement to develop their system. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think that what sets Jeet Kune Do therefore apart from MMA, which in some ways does the same process of refinement and so on, for the context in which they are, and it's a combat sport, so it is different. But what sets it apart is the fact that Jeet Kune Do is developed specifically for actual street fighting application and combat. I think it can be, there's elements of it that can be used for sport, but is primarily used for street fighting and self-defense. But what sets it apart is its historical link to the Junfan Kung Fu. There's that core common curriculum that I think sets it apart from MMA. If you're not doing the original Junfan and researching that as a means to understand the process of evolution from Junfan to JKD, I would dispute whether you're actually doing JKD and not MMA. I do agree with some people in that regard. I don't know how you feel about
that. To me, there is no separation, right? To me, there was a time when he referred to what he did as the Junfan method, and the way I approach it. So let's say tomorrow is June 4th, and on June 5th, right? On Monday, June 5th, he has the idea to change the name of what he's doing and call it Jeet Kune. Because like you have alluded to earlier, there's all this stuff ruminating, right, in his mind. And then on Monday, June 5th, he goes, you know what? I think I like the term Jeet Kune to describe what I'm doing. What now is the difference between what he was doing the day before, the year before, that was called the Junfan method? To me, there's no significant difference. You see, so I don't. I look at Jeet Kune as being both the physical art and the philosophy. I think that the name came about because of a way of thinking, and that way of thinking is what guided the physical development of the art. And I think that people who lived on past 1973, that's what you do. You use that same process that you were talking about, right? And that's how Jeet Kune that's how Jeet Kune continues. Some people might even say that, right? And actually, that's how it continues, because I don't think it's supposed to be preserved. Because I think if you preserve it, you are now saying, oh, well, it was only up to this point, and so we preserve. No, I think that Jeet Kune is evergreen. Jeet Kune continues past Bruce Lee because he blazed the trail. And so all we do is to continue on that path that he blazed, right? That's my take on it. So the second question was Lee infallible in all things Jeet Kune?
I guess I was trying to poke a bit of a nest there in terms of dogmatic thinking and all those sorts of ideas. But so you've two possible routes of argument to go down there. You either go down, well, yes, he was, or no, he wasn't. And I suppose if you go down the whole idea of, well, yes, he is infallible in all things JKD, I think for me the next interesting question is, well, where are the boundaries of that infallibility? Where does that infallibility run out? Why is he only infallible in this particular subject and not other subjects? And this idea of we therefore must stick rigidly to the teachings as written down, and disregard the social and cultural context, which we sort of refer to, and say that it isn't, because if it's infallible, if he's infallible in all things JKD, then it would extrapolate logically that then so is JKD. JKD is infallible because Bruce Lee was infallible with all things JKD, and that then means that JKD has limitations to its growth. It cannot change and maintain its relevance both culturally and socially as society changes. And so I don't think he was infallible in all things JKD. And JKD itself can neither be fallible or infallible because it's a concept, it's an idea, it's a process of exploration. And the process, the genuine process of exploration through a neo-scientific method is in the pursuit of truth, and therefore it cannot be infallible, and or indeed fallible. It's neither the two. It's just a concept. It's an idea. And so the impression that we are given by some of these individuals who are talking about JKD is that he was, because they give the impression, certainly, that one must pursue and preserve the art perfectly as it was taught by Bruce Lee, which to me just becomes I would love them to explain their viewpoint on it, because to me it just seems very dogmatic, and even more dogmatic than some of the traditional martial arts systems.
Right. Yeah, because so that relates to question 4, because question 4 is JKD perfect, and if so, what is the evidence of that? Right. And I wonder, tell me what you think, because you're a smarter guy than I am. I think they just enjoyed and loved his movies so much. He was so dynamic and flawless in the movies that they transferred that into real life, and then the stuff that he wrote that we're able to read, it sounds so cool. And so we got this incredible physical specimen, and then we have what he wrote. It's gotta be perfect.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that I think that hits the nail on the head in terms of the perspective that they're coming from. And the sad thing about it is, none of us have the time to be the IT manager in our job and come home and train the way Bruce Lee trained to be as good as Bruce Lee. Some of us aren't, no matter how much training we do, just don't have the physical attributes that Bruce Lee had. The universe really did break the mold when Bruce Lee was made, and to try and emulate or to try and mimic or impersonate him, I think does Jeet Kune and Bruce Lee's art a disservice, because I don't think that's what he would have intended, certainly from what I have read, and it also does themselves a disservice, because they're missing out on that personal exploration, rather than in favor of trying to preserve something they can never be. And you hit it on there a wee while ago. I mean, you only preserve something that's dead. You don't preserve something that's growing, and flourishing. And the whole root and branches analogy is, I actually love it, because what's the end story of that life cycle? Well, it's seeds that go out and find new turf and grow into new flowers.
You're right. I didn't even think of that one, because here's what I thought of. They never mentioned the trunk, which is the delivery system from the root to the branches. But now you're talking about the seeds. I didn't even think of that. Right? So there is so much more to that whole discussion about roots and branches that's not touched upon.
Absolutely.
Just this fixation on the idea that the branches refer to the different martial art methods that are out there, and so people are attracted to all those methods, and that's what they're doing, and they don't understand the roots. So let's say that you're a guy who has trained in Japanese jiu-jitsu, you've trained in Filipino martial arts, you've trained in French kickboxing, you've trained in many branches. How has that training in many branches prevented you from understanding the root of martial arts?
Well, it's really interesting, because I've been really blessed with the arts that I've been had the privilege to learn, and the instructors I've been able to train with, um, and every single art that I have trained in, all have. Let's take one example: the 5 methods of attack that Bruce Lee wrote down, which is core to JKD. Every single art has them, and so the exploring those different arts has allowed me to understand the root, or JKD, better,
Right.
because I've seen the similarities in each one. And as I said earlier on, if something's true, it's true all the time, and it's true everywhere.
Yes.
And those concepts are true and are effective in each of those systems,
Yes.
and work in each of those systems. And in fact, studying JKD made my jujitsu better, and it made my savat better, because I use all the same concepts. I just use the same ideas the whole way through, and it makes those
Yeah.
arts simpler.
Yeah.
So this idea that I'm accumulating styles, I'm not really. I'm just applying the Jeet Kune concepts in each of those arts to
Right.
test their validity, to test if they work.
Right.
And if they
Which
work,
which which renders the Jeet Kune invisible.
yeah,
Right. And I
yeah,
think that's the difficulty for some people.
yeah,
They can't see it, so they don't know what to identify. But when Bruce Lee came up with this finite number of methods of attack, was that not through observation and experimentation of other things?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So he didn't come up with it in a vacuum.
no,
So obviously he observed them somewhere,
yeah,
but he was the first to collate them and give it an identifying name, such
yeah,
as 5 ways of attack or what have you. So to me, again, it is this idea that Jeet Kune is separate from what's out there, at the same time that it is not, because it was
yeah,
born out of the observation of what was out there. So it goes back to what you've been talking about from the very first minute, the social and the cultural context,
yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Mark, I think that it's tough. It's tough for people to understand Jeet Kune if they don't have a mind like yours.
Oh dear.
I think it's really tough. If they just have this linear way of thinking, right? They're gonna have a rough time with it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at if Jeet Kune is not perfect, right? Can it ever be refined and improved to make it closer to perfection? What role does an individual's constitution have in that process? So this idea, yeah, of again, why would they think it can't be refined? I mean, what is there in nature, what is there in history, what is there in life that has remained exactly the same since the day it first came about?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I have seen it refined, and get better. Training with Guru Bob Brain in 40
Yeah.
combat. And it, it it just it blows my mind that a guy can write things down and say, we're gonna. I've got this system where it's no fixed positions. It's going to be formless, so I can assume all forms, and which gets back to what we were saying there about it being invisible. It's in all forms, but it's not, and it is at the
Right.
same time. Um, and yet they stick rigidly to what appears to me to be a curriculum-based definition of JKD. It's what was taught at this particular era, at this particular part of the world, by this particular guy, and that's JKD, and it cannot diverge or divert from that whatsoever. And even to throw then into the context of, well then, okay, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comes on the scene, and people then start talking about anti-grappling techniques, and a lot of the JKD guys that I trained with decided to go off and like David Numa and went off and started to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then for people to criticize them, to say, well, they're no longer doing JKD because Bruce Lee didn't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's not in the curriculum. It's not there. It's not on the page. There's no BJJ. And then you ask the question, well, what would you do then if somebody's going to do a double leg tackle on you? What are you going to do? Poke him in the eye? And then they go, yeah, I would. And that's their serious answer back. And you go, oh, no, that's not that's not what we're supposed to be doing here, And if JKD is perfect and it cannot be refined, then again, that means it's immune to scrutiny. It means that it is immune to changes in society and culture. And, just to give a basic, and I know I'll be criticized for this example, because the retort, full stop, will be, but MMA is not a martial arts sport. Anyway, I'll concede that, but set that aside for one point. And when you look at the early on in those contests, and every striker was taken straight to the floor, and all the strikers stopped doing spinning back kicks, because as soon as they turned their back, they were suplexed, or they were driven face first into the dirt, and that was fine. So they stopped doing spinning back kicks, and then 5, 6, 7 years later, grapplers knocked out with spinning back kick. Why? Because he never trained to defend against a spinning back kick, and then spinning back kicks came back on the scene. Now that's just a simple example of how cultural context changed an art, and then changed it back again. And are we then saying that JKD, if it's a curriculum-based system, is that curriculum so perfect that it is immune to those changes?
Right.
And of course it's not. So can it be refined? Well, of course it can be refined, because it's a human social construct. So not only can it be refined, it can be improved based on that social environment, but it also can be improved just by making it more effective, just by looking at what other systems do. There's martial arts in the world that nobody knows anything about. There's bound to be styles of wrestling and combat in jungles of Borneo and tribes that have never been reached before. Who knows what's going to come out of those systems in 25, 30 years when we make contact with those people and learn their wrestling systems, and we don't know. And so, of course, it can be refined. And then it gets back to this idea of, well, what is a person's constitution? How is the way a person is made? What role does that play in it? Because if you have a perfect curriculum, that would imply to me that it is perfect for everybody, that everybody can do that curriculum perfectly, if trained. And well,
because if it's true all the time, and it's true everywhere, right?
Yeah, of course. And so, well, not every human's born the same. Not every human's got 2 legs. Not every human's got 2 arms, sadly. And that's a tragedy. But that's the reality of it. And so, are we saying that those people are excluded from this special group of being able to do JKD? Well, no, of course not. That's a horrible thing to say. And then even just taking it to a personal level, for me, as I've already touched on, will my JKD change as I get older? Will things that were useful, we're supposed to absorb what is useful, well, will the things that are useful today, will those same things be useful for me in 40 years' time?
Right.
And again, I see that in Bob Breen. No, Bob used to have the best front kick in the world. Beat the Japanese karate team with that front kick. He can't do it anymore.
Right.
But he doesn't need to, because he's got other stuff.
I mean, you just made me think of something, because with the latest mass shooting here in the US, there's of course a call for more gun control, and my little sister and I are the biggest fans of British TV. Like we watch all the British TV shows, all the Irish. I was watching a Welsh TV series the other day, right? Bang, I think it's called, right? I was right. My little sister and I are in love with the TV and series in the UK. The day, well, what if firearm law in the United Kingdom changes? And right, that's going to change a ton of things. That's going to change everybody's approach to self-defense.
Yep.
You know, because I watch these TV shows and I'm going, what? Why aren't these cops afraid to just go in? You know, they go on the estate and they just walk in like it's nothing. And I'm like, oh, there's no guns. Right? They don't expect a gun. If British law ever changed,
Yeah.
everything changes, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Social and cultural context.
Context. Yeah.
It's so important. You can't ignore it. And but I don't think Bruce Lee was that Bruce Lee himself was that dogmatic, right? In fact, did you see? I think it was Tim Rettiger, Red Tiger, who he said he was researching for an article, an upcoming article, and he found a quote. And the last sentence in this Bruce Lee quote is something about, I hope people who like Jeet Kune will train it and improve it. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
So what are we supposed to make of that now? If the founder himself says, I hope people will improve on the work that I've done, what are we supposed to do with that?
Yeah. You know, and I suppose one of the things I sort of theorize about, you know, is you know, a lot of people sort of refer to, you know, this group of this original student and that original student and this original student, and he said this and they said that, and so on and so forth. And I often wonder, you know, was Bruce Lee incompetent in his ability to get his house in order in relation to what he wanted those people to understand what Jeet Kune Do was? Or what I prefer to believe is, did he relish the different interpretations of it? Was that what he was after? Did he like the fact that there were people taking slightly different viewpoints of what he taught them?
But hang on a second. Bruce Lee wasn't around when those people started taking slightly different viewpoints. He was gone. None of that taking of different viewpoints occurred during his lifetime. You keep that in mind, right? You see, Bruce Lee was this dynamic character that everybody loved to hang out with. You know, and it was martial art that brought them together. It was martial art that kept them together. And then once he was off the scene in 1970, things started to change. Things changed again in 73 when he died. Yeah. And it was only after that then it was like, well, we got this expression and that expression and the next one, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But during his time, it was like, no, I call the shots. And if you're going to hang with us, you're going to do things the way that we're doing them. Right. So I don't know anybody would have had the courage to say to Bruce Lee, well, you know, I don't know if that would really work. You'd be like, okay, well, let's try it.
Let's pressure test it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You know, right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the other thing that I was talking about recently. Like, I think that people, you know, the term pressure tested became famous because of jiu-jitsu, because of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? And the whole grappling, the whole grappling scene. But if you think that there was no pressure testing before that, I mean, I forget who it was, but you probably know about this. There were guys in Japan in the 1930s wearing body armor and protectors.
Yeah.
And going full contact, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, as much as we love Bruce Lee, if we say, well, he was the pioneer of full contact training in martial arts, that's incorrect. That's
Yeah.
historically inaccurate.
Yeah. Yeah.
He definitely for his era,
Yeah.
definitely for his era. But so people sometimes people they go a little bit too far, assigning a little bit too much
Yeah.
greatness, you know, or even uniqueness to Bruce Lee and what he did. Right? Okay, so it's
Yeah.
midnight where you are. Let's try to
Oh.
yeah. Give me
Listen,
some
I'm normally up very late doing paperwork for this place, so no,
yeah.
I'm all good, and I'm off tomorrow, so I'm
Well,
okay.
hey man, listen. I did not know the origin story of Raptor, but I'm highly impressed with what you've been able to do, and I wish you all the success in the future. It's a cool setup. It's a great idea. You know, as a semi marketing guy, right? I really I really love what it is you're doing. So give me some famous last words. Tell people how to get in touch with you. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
So best way to get in touch is through our website, which is www.raptormartialarts.uk. There's a wee sign up button on there, and yeah, that's Romeo Alpha Papa Tango Romeo martialarts.uk. And or yeah, just go straight on the website, or you can find us on Facebook, and book a free trial to come down and meet us there. And we'll take you through all the different martial arts that we do, and not accumulation, we're just refining. And, and yeah, Jeet Kune runs through everything that we teach. So
Right.
yes, it doesn't matter whether you're doing the freestyle wrestling, whether you're doing Savat, it's the JKD principles run through everything we coach.
Hey,
And
I have not done this in the last few dialogues. Who is someone that you think I should have on the program, or even have back on the program? And I know Bob Breen would be the first, right? And I think so too. But is there anybody you can think of that, as far as you know, has not been on the program?
there's maybe David Uma, Jeff Bleefman. I don't know if Neil McLeod's been on.
Neil has, yes.
Yeah. Who else?
But I wanted to have
Yeah.
Rachel on instead of Neil, but I
Understandable.
right?
Yeah, so Jeff Bleefman, he's Bob's right hand man now. He's really pushing the 4D stuff.
Okay.
So it'd be good to speak to him.
Yeah, because I don't think I even know his name.
Yeah, no, he's he's a dude. Jeff's a
Okay,
dude.
I'll
Yeah,
reach out. I'll
he's
reach
really
out.
good. Yeah.
Nice,
So there
nice.
we go. Yeah.
All right, man. Hey, Mark Atthelair.
No, listen, thank you so much for having me on. It's a real honor. I've watched loads of the episodes before, and the dialogues, and it's just I fell off my seat when you messaged and says, "Yeah, do you want to come on?" And yeah, I'm just a dude in Belfast here, and that's
Hey,
class.
man,
That's amazing.
you're doing great things, and that's what's important. And you're really making a difference in people's lives. And what more can we ask for? You know what I mean?
That's a privilege. It's an absolute privilege. It really
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
All right,
So
man. Have a good evening and enjoy your
yep,
bank holiday tomorrow. And say hello to the Queen for me. That's my girl.
I will do.
Yeah. All right, man. Take it easy.
Yeah.
Talk soon.
Cheerio.
Okay.
Bye.
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 All right, folks. That was Jeet Kune Dialogues episode number 200, and it was 225. Yeah. Okay. I lost my notes on that. Right. So you guys comment. I will ask Mark to take a look through the comments and see if there's anything that he or I need to answer. That's it. So feel free, share, like, comment, ask questions. I'll review everything you have to post in. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D Woods. It's the same. Well, don't worry. I'm back on Instagram. Next Friday, Russell Dulai will be back on. We're going to do a part 2 of the reverse dialogue, right? He promises to really get me in trouble this time around. So that'll be 6 p.m. What's next week? The 10th. Okay. So if I don't see you then, I'll see you before that, I'll see you on Wednesday for the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast. Right. Remember that at paypal.me/unifiedma Miami is the Jeet Kune Journey Volume 1. Remember also that you can support the program at jkdrebel.com. Click on the Rebel Gear link, and that's where you'll see stuff like this. The 4 tenets of Jeet Kune t-shirt, long sleeve, short sleeve, sweatshirt, hoodie, and coffee mug, all that good stuff. But of course, the best thing to do, if you're on the YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Over here on Facebook, like and follow and all that stuff. Spread the word, right? Let's do some great stuff with the Jeet Kune dialogues. All right, that's it, folks. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, signing off. See ya.